Thank you for the introduction and everything. So my name is Mano. It's a long name, but that part basically is what I'm typically called. And I work at the University of Auckland. And just like everywhere else, we have got issues of academic integrity. And I mean, I'm actually not surprised to see that there are issues over in Russia as well. Every single country. I think it's a nature of us, the human beings, that if we can, we always tend to find the shortcut, right? Now, in addition to being an academic, I'm also the academic integrity advisor at the University of, in the School of Computer Science. We have a number of academic integrity advisors. And one of my roles as part of the academic integrity advisor is to ensure that we look after and uphold academic integrity at the university, and also ensure that we have processes in place so that it is difficult to cheat. So, one of the things that we always find is that cheating is very, very prevalent. I'm going to talk mostly about contract cheating, but at the same time, it's actually good to understand that this is not a new phenomenon. It has been around for a long, long time. Well, before we were born, well, before our parents or grandparents or their grandparents were born. So it has been happening all over the time. And as this biblical verse says, right, if we seek, we will find. Right. So there is always some cheating that goes on in the case of academic world, also in the case of other areas, right? And as I said before, it is the human nature. But unfortunately, in an academic environment, we cannot afford to have academic misconduct, mainly because we need to know if a student has gone through a degree and got a degree. We need to know that the student had done the work themselves, and therefore they meet the learning outcomes that are said to be part of the degree. So if somebody else had done the degree, or somebody else has helped them do the degree where the student had unfair advantage, then there is a very good chance that the student does not meet the learning outcomes, and therefore we cannot assume that the students will have the necessary skills that they are supposed to have. So in our experience, what we find is that nearly a third of the class cheats given the opportunity. I run a class of about 400 to 500 students every year in one of the semesters. And at the end of the semester, we go through a plagiarism check, and we find typically at least 25% of the class in some sort of an academic misconduct. And this is a large percentage of the class, and it is a large number. So it takes a lot of time to process these incidents. Now, what are the common forms of cheating? Like, we know these things very well. I mean, typically those days, like, people used to take a little piece of paper and then write down a lot of the formulae or other data, take it with them, hidden somewhere to the exam room. And these days, a number of exams have taken the steps to stay away from recall type questions where you need to memorize something. Right? All the information that needs to be memorized by the student are typically given to the students. It could be an open book exam, or it could the examination might have an appendix with all the necessary information, such as formulae or any other information. So we follow that approach. Therefore, there is no need for a student to take a cheat sheet with them because we do provide them with a cheat sheet ourselves. Um, so what we find in this case is that there are three main forms of cheating that we normally observe. One is they copy from their classmates. Right. So typically, when we have got assignments, so as homework, then they take it home, they will tend to collaborate with their classmates. Collaboration at a conceptual level is a very good thing, and we encourage that. But what happens is that they also copy some of the material. So I'm in computer science department, as you already know. So our main assessment form is writing computer programs. And once one of the students write these programs, right, there will be maybe one or two other students who would want to get their hands on this program so that they can copy it across. So this is one form of copying that we observe. The other form, which is prevalent these days, is to seek solutions online. There are sites such as Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, where you can go and ask legitimate questions where people will answer those questions. But at the same time, they also know that they can also find out that these questions are actually from an SS homework. It's not that difficult to find out that this question is part of a homework question. So they will politely decline answering these questions. However, there are companies, the so-called education technology companies, that specialize in cheating. Right. So Chegg is one of these companies based in the US, but mostly operate out of India because there is cheap labor in India. So what these guys do is they provide solutions within a very short amount of time to any questions that you ask, provided the question is sort of year one or year two level university subject. Like pretty much all the subject areas are covered by them: computer science, physics, mathematics, business areas. Pretty much all of they span everything. And so even during examination time, suppose an examination lasts 3 hours, you can a student can post their question onto the exam at the start of from the exam at the start of the exam, and then within probably about half an hour's time, they will be getting their answers through Check. So this has been one of the main source of problems for us. Right, there are lots and lots of students or lots and lots of questions from the exams getting posted onto Check, and now we have to somehow find out how to handle these violations of academic integrity. I will talk a bit more about that later on. The other form that we find these days is attempts to gain other forms of unfair advantage. For example, right, a student might say, hey, my grandmother passed away, and therefore I need an additional time. And there will be like 35 grandmothers the student might have, because like the last semester there were 2 grandmothers who passed away, and then the previous semester was another 5, right? So they make up stories, and also stories such as there's a power system failure, or there was an internet failure, all sorts of stories that the students make up in order to get unfair advantage, such as extended time for an examination, for example, right? And especially with digital examinations, we can actually find out whether there's an internet, what time they are doing, like what are the time stamps at which they are doing the examination. And we can also find out at what time there is a power outage or there is an internet outage from the service providers. So the students claim and the actual fact, they don't match up. So that's how we know that there are students taking unfair advantage. So now once we find that some students have cheated, then what do we really do? So we have to go through a process of prosecution. And this prosecution takes a lot of time. So typically, an academic integrity process involves prevention, detection, and followed by prosecution. Now, prevention is generally something that we cannot do. And because there is always a way to get around the system. So cheating cannot be easily circumvented. So we can mitigate it, but not prevent it. For mitigation, we need to think about how we design the assessment, and it will take a little bit of time thinking about the problem and then coming up with solutions that are easy to implement and also easy to deploy. Right? We'll talk about those things in a second. And the other part is like if somebody has cheated, how do we detect? Right. So these two things, especially the detection part, is fairly easy these days because we have got tools. We have got Turnitin that our university uses, and I see that you are using this anti-plagiarism, right? I believe I pronounced it correctly. So with these sort of detection tools, right, detecting whether something has been copied over is easy. In computer science, we also use this tool called MOS, which comes from Stanford University, which is able to detect similarities in computer programs. And especially in our department, MOS is the predominantly used tool because we deal with computer programs most of the time. Turnitin, sometimes we use it, especially with the dissertation, master's dissertation, master's thesis, or a PhD thesis. Sometimes we will be using Turnitin, but generally speaking, for most of our undergraduate degrees, the submission is a program, so therefore it's MOS that we use. So detection part, because of the existence of tools, we don't really spend a lot of time. But prosecution takes a lot of time because we have to check with the students to find out what exactly went wrong and where. And sometimes the detection mechanism can be flawed because sometimes there are false positives as well. So we have to have a chat, whether it's a formal chat or an informal chat. We have to have that conversation with the student so that we can find out what their story is. And then we have to fill out a number of paperwork, etc. And it takes a substantial amount of time for a student. Now, going back to this last class I'm teaching, we have got 420 students this particular semester. And now, if we find that there are 25% of them cheating, I'll be left with at least 100 students who I need to be talking to and then interacting with respect to this academic misconduct. And last year, we picked up 106 students, of which 99 were true positives, meaning that they did have something to report, whereas 7 students, the evidence was not very strong, so we let them off. So altogether, the academic integrity processes are very time-consuming, except that for the detection part, we have the tools to help us. So one of the mitigation techniques that we use is the following. So when we have got a question, I use Google Translate to get one of my questions. I don't know whether this is correct or not, but this is the source question. Right, it comes from the Lord of the Rings, which is essentially like New Zealand is famous for Lord of the Rings because all the movies have been shot in New Zealand, right? Anyway, so here we have a question based on Lord of the Rings. It doesn't matter if you know the answer or not. But what we do as a mitigation strategy is to have multiple versions of the question. Now, as I said before, cheating happens all the time. So even in a moderated, not moderated, in-person invigilated exam, we have found students to be cheating. So what we do, therefore, is we have 4 different versions of the exam, a green one, a blue one, a pink one, and a yellow one, let's say. The real answer is, the final answer is the same, but we have randomized the order of all the answers, right? Which typically works okay. And what we found though, is even this strategy fails miserably in certain conditions. So what the students do is they write there, because of the fact that the answer in all of these cases is exactly the same answer, right? Independent of the version of the question, what we found they do is they write the answer in big letters, very big letters, so that they can go and see, they can actually glance at the students sitting next to them and then pick up the answer, right? So they compare the answers, and then whichever is the majority, they write it down. So this is, again, not a nice thing. Whatever strategy that we have for mitigation, there's always a counter strategy. So what we then did was we developed another counter strategy whereby we have exam papers. Every single student gets a different exam paper, completely different one. So here we have got an exam paper here. There are two different versions, but if you have got 100 students, you'll have 100 different versions. If you've got 400, you'll have 400 versions. So here, again, it's a sort of questions, and you'll see that the questions are identical, but the answers are different. And every student gets a different answer. So copying answer from one student to another is not going to be helpful. So this is a strategy we had been using in order to ensure that students cannot copy from each other within examinations. So here, one of the things, this is a numerical question where they have to solve a numerical problem, and every single student will get a totally different answer. Right. So now, one of the advantages this particular way of assessment has is that we can sit the students next to each other. We don't have to even have any spacing between them. Here, this is an in-class examination. You can see that students are sitting next to each other, working their way through, and we have no problem of students copying from each other because every student has got an individually tailored exam paper. Right. We do ensure that they don't talk to each other, they don't collaborate with each other, but they do their own work, but they can sit next to each other. Trying to copy from somebody else will be absolutely meaningless in this case. Right. So then we had the coronavirus and the pandemic and so on. So the paper-based exams pretty much became the thing of the past. We haven't had any paper-based exam for the last 3 years now. Everything was done online, and we use a different systems. We use Moodle, we use Canvas, we use Inspira. Inspira is usually used for examinations, while we use Canvas as a learning management system. However, it also supports quizzes, which can be run as examinations. We also use Moodle for some of the courses. So the same technique that we used in these printed examinations, we also started using in the online examination, because with the online examination, there's no supervision and there's a lot more chance of people copying from each other. They can pick up their phone, talk to their mates, right? They can look at online sources, etc. They can post their questions online, get an answer. Like here's an example of some of our questions being posted on chat. Right. So in fact, if you look at if you do a little bit of search online, you will see that this company Chegg has been on the news pretty much every day especially during the pandemic, for all the wrong reasons. They have been helping students to cheat and at the same time making money. So one of the things we notice is that this one says how many questions were posted on Chegg during 2019. This is before the pandemic, and then during 2020, and this is during the pandemic. And in fact, the pandemic sort of really hit around March or end of March. This area in many parts of the world, and the number of questions posted on Chegg skyrocketed all the way through. And like every single course we had, right? They all had questions after question after question posted on Chegg. And this really became a major issue for us to tackle. So as I said before, right, our questions, our examinations or assessments are run on these LMS systems, right, learning management systems, and these are done online. So what we had basically started doing was we said, okay, we are going to for these exams, we are going to make them individual, right, just like the paper ones, and then we'll have several questions, like the same question but several variants, and we are going to use every student is going to get a different variant, right? So I'll show you a system in a second showing how exactly we do that. But if once we have got several variants, if a student posted their own variant to Chegg, and this is a case of an individualized question, and a student had posted that to Chegg, but the data that the question they have got clearly identifies who the student is to us. So we knew who exactly the student is. So we called them in and then had a conversation with them, and then they got prosecuted further along the way. Now, so a couple of things to show you here. One is, if this question has been individualized, right, no matter where they post this question, we are able to track the students who posted it. So we know who the student is, right? So this reduced the number of questions that people post onto the Chegg or any other site dramatically, because the students figured out that if the question is individualized, they're not going to, I mean, they will be found out if they try to get some help online. They can still go and get help from other people, right? They can pay somebody else, like from another university or something, to help them do the problem. But if they posted it online, they will get detected. So the other thing that we have done is to make the question easily searchable on the net. We have been fingerprinting the questions. So here we have got a word which is absolutely garbage, but this is a fingerprint that we can search for. It doesn't have to be a rubbish word like that. It can be some sort of a phrase or some funny combination of something that you can uniquely search for. Right. So we use some such things in addition to the individual questions or individual question variables. So here, this one uniquely identifies our question, and every student gets the unique identifier. And this part, the data part we have here, that uniquely identifies the student. So with both of them in place, we are able to track where the questions have been posted, and then we are also able to track where the question originated from, or to which student this question belonged to. Therefore, we are able to find and prosecute the student. And once this prosecution is in place, students do not cheat, or at least they don't post onto these places that we monitor. So this solved us quite a number of issues. Now, let me go back again and I'll tell you how we actually do this. So what we have been doing was we have been writing questions in a programming language, and this programming language is called C# here. And what you will notice here is the question is, what is the positive x value that satisfies the equation ax squared plus bx minus c? And the values of a, b, x and c, right? These are randomly picked up, subject to certain constraints, okay? And then we know the answer is x, right? And we are able to generate through the code many variants of this question, right? And given that we are using a programming language, we are able to have really complex questions as well. So if I preview this, right, we have a question here. What's the positive x value that satisfies the equation 3x squared, 6x minus 297? The answer is 9. If I preview again, we will get a different equation and also a different answer, as you can clearly see here. This time we got 2x squared plus 8x minus 90 with the answer 5. Okay, but again, if you are, even if you are in computer science, I mean, programming is not everyone's cup of tea. And if you are outside computer science, it is very unusable. So we have some other easy to author systems, right? Here, it's a user interface where we can actually type in a question, something like, what is the, let's say, which of the following is national capital? And the idea is that we provide a question and also we provide a large number of correct answers and a large number of incorrect answers. And then we pick up one correct answer and then 4 incorrect answers and then come up with a question variant. So this ensures that there will be a number of different variations in each of the question variants, right? So one student might get one correct answer, whereas another student will get a different correct answer, provided there are sufficient number of correct answers. So let's try this thing out. So we'll provide some correct options, Morse code. London. I need to watch my time as well at the same time. Paris. I'm going to do a few actually, just to and then let's do a few incorrect options. Sydney. Auckland definitely is one. And Mumbai. This is in India, in case you don't know. And let's say, okay, that's also an incorrect one. Okay, so with all these correct and incorrect options, the system will automatically pick up one correct answer and one incorrect answer. I can go a preview. We are not going to actually see a question as a student is going to get, but this is only a preview of what we have entered here, because it's just to see whether the question is being rendered correctly. But when we once we have done this one, what we can do is we can go and generate many variants, like 200 or 1600 variants of these questions, and then we can make a big bank of questions from that. Then we upload these question bank to one of these learning management systems such as Moodle, Canvas, or Infera. And once we have a question bank, these systems will pick up one of those questions randomly and then give it to the students. And then not only that, they also keep a log of which student got which question. So in case they go on to post these questions somewhere, we can figure out where to which student these questions belong. In addition, as I said before, right, once we individualize, students don't go and post these questions online. Okay, the other thing we can actually do is, I want to show you one more thing, is to have parameters in questions, such as let's say, let's say X wants to know how many New Zealand dollars he may get for Y rubles, okay, if the exchange rate is 1.1. Okay, so what we have here is a question where we want to change this one as well as that one. Okay, so why do we want to put this X as a variable? Is because we can detect if a student had been posting this question online, right? It is nothing to do with the calculation, but it is for us to identify the student, right? So for X, we are going to have a choice, right? This is going to be something like Max, Matt, Jane, James. We say Max, Mr., so make it James and Jim. Okay, save that. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose this first handle that we have put here for the name of this person. In addition, we want to create a random variable, probably between 24 and then 5, okay, and then say that this is going to be my rubles amount, okay, so reference to that. And now I need to set my answer, which is going to be this value multiplied by that value. So we're going to have an expression which says at 2 times 1.1, say that. And my answer now is going to be a numerical answer, which is going to be this 3. Right, the expression that we have created, and we could also have an error margin of 0.01 maybe, right? Let's give a small error margin. Okay, so with that all in place, we can go preview the question. So we get this thing, Mr. Jim wants to know how many New Zealand dollars you may get for 43 rubles. And then if you preview, and the answer is 47.3, preview again. We got a different value. You still have Mr. Jim, right? But we have got a different value here, 44 and 48. So essentially, this allows us to create multiple variants of the question. And then, not only that, we can, once we have all these questions, we can generate many variants as a question bank, and then we can upload these question banks to our chosen learning management system. Right, So we have gone through that already. So one of the things we find is pedagogically, this individualization is a good way to mitigate contract cheating, because like if they get someone else such as Shake to do their questions, right, they need to post it on Shake's website. And the fact that we can dictate who actually has posted this question means that the students are very, very reluctant to post individualized questions. Right. So individualized question therefore mitigate cheating without being punitive. So that's one of the real advantage of using such an approach for to help with contract cheating. The other one is that it also allows students to collaborate, but at a conceptual level, right? So if he wanted, like for a take-home assignment, if it's individualized, they can collaborate at the conceptual level, but they cannot share their answers, because the answer of one student is going to be not very meaningful to the other student. The third one is it also gives students very many questions to practice. We can generate thousands of questions if they wanted to practice the process. And for us, very important, it saves us a lot of time that otherwise we spend on prosecuting these students, right, when they cheat. So just to reiterate, in terms of well, it doesn't apply to every single case, but at least where in some of the domains where we can use, we can fingerprint this assessment. That's an easy thing to do across any domain. And also, we can individualize these questions. Again, it doesn't really apply to all domains, but some domains it does, some domains it doesn't. But however, if you decide that we are going to keep the same answers, then in that case, it is possible that you can individualize any domain, in fact. Say, for example, right, if we go back here and let me... So what I would want to do is have a question such as this, right? I don't really care about the answer, but Professor X would like you to write an essay about something, okay, whatever, right? So now X is a choice that we can make between several names, and similarly, along in the question, you can have several variations which have nothing to do with the answer. In this case, the answer is going to be exactly the same for everyone, but the question is different. So if the student posts this question to an essay mill where they are paying someone to write them an essay, and then if you can actually find the question, you know who actually posted the question, right? So even outside of the sort of a computational domain, this sort of technique can be used. It doesn't matter whether you use this sort of software or write your own, it doesn't matter, but individualization as a general concept is quite powerful to mitigate cheating, and in particular contract cheating. Okay, so I think that's a good time for me to stop, and then let's have some discussion, sharing our thoughts.
Manu, большое спасибо за интересное
Manu, thank you very much for an amazing talk. We do have a lot of questions.
Логунова Наталья Леонидовна
Natalia Logunova is asking online, how do students take it? It means that professors basically suspect them in cheating. Do they protest, or do they somehow complain about that?
So this is a good question, and all they know is that, I mean, they are getting individualized questions. And the good thing about it is mitigate cheating without being punitive. We are not suspecting them of cheating. We are simply giving them questions that are their own. And what a lot of students are very positive about it, mainly because they think that we are taking effort into upholding the value of their degree. And they also like working on their own personalized version of the question. So the feedback that we get is very, very positive. We never had any negative feedback about it. One issue, however, sometimes students raise is that going to be fair? If I ask you the question, how much is 5 plus 8? And if I ask someone else, how much is 129 plus 325? So you can see clearly that there is an unfairness issue here. One question is much easier to do that rather than the other. So that is an issue. And sometimes students do ask about it, right? Am I getting a fair question? And our answer is always yes. This is because we ensure fairness, because all the questions go through a review process, and then we, like, not only the person who creates it, but also the person who reviews it ensures that questions are fair. But other than that, we'd have absolutely no concern, and the students are extremely happy to have individualized questions.
Спасибо. Вы несколько раз упомянули школьников.
Thank you. You mentioned school students a few times, and we have a question from Alexandra Galkina. What is the maximum percentage of plagiarism allowed for school students? I mean, it is existent as a rule, as a percentage.
We don't have, essentially, especially in my school, right, School of Computer Science, we don't really do essays very much, except maybe in one of the courses in the first year. So we don't really use a tool such as anti-plagiat or Turnitin, etc. in our school. And there is also, in terms of similarity measure, right, the percentage, that doesn't really matter too much, because what exactly they copied is the thing that we always look for. Even we do look for similarities in code. So if they are copying one function, right, one kind of a key area, then they could be taken for academic misconduct. It is not the amount, but rather it is the part that they have copied that matters, even if it's a small part. Like, for example, some students only copied the brain, right? And then the others copied a lot more. Maybe the other parts that have been copied is not all that important, for example, right? So we do take that into account. So there's no threshold, right, to say that, hey, over this percentage, this is bad, right? Under this percentage, it's all good, right? So it is case by case.
Спасибо за ответ. Я думаю, что
Thank you very much for the answer. I think that our Russian teachers have a lot to learn from you, because actually in Russia we really love to set this borderline percentage of plagiarism, and it is a kind of a rule of thumb, unfortunately. Another question from Natalia Piganova. What software do you use to create these questionnaires, a set of questions for every student?
Yes, so the software that demonstrated to you here, this is the one that we use. This is called Dividend, and it's a free. This is something that we have developed here in Auckland, and it's available. Right, this is not something you need to pay for. It is based on something called Dividend, which is a command line set of tools. Right, it's a bit difficult to operate because you need to have a good understanding of using some of these, let's say, complicated programs, right? Whereas the online version, the one that we have seen here, is a little bit more friendlier, right? I wouldn't say extremely friendly, but you still need to know how to drive it. But there's a bit of instructions here how to drive it. But this is a tool that we use, and it's a free tool, right? You can use it as well. If you go here, you can drive it if you like.
Спасибо. У нас есть еще один вопрос.
Thank you. We have one more question. I'm not sure
вы прокомментируете.
If it refers to the topic of your talk, but maybe you have a comment. So we have a situation here.
Отправили в журнал, была сделана еще одна
They sent our article for a plagiarism check. And the percentage was bigger after it was sent to the journal. Can you comment on that? Why did the percentage change?
It will, I mean, initially, are you saying that initially you had a percentage and then somebody else detected it as a bigger percentage? Is that what you mean to say? Ask?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on what tools are being used to detect plagiarism, right? If some of the tools are more sophisticated than the others, they will find a lot more. Say, for example, right, to give another example, right, Microsoft has a search engine called Bing, right? And you can search for something on Bing, you get so many number of hits. Use Google, you get a lot more, right? Because it depends on how much the algorithm they use for checking similarities. Well, in case of search engine, as well, it's the same thing, like what sort of algorithm they use for that. And also how big a database they have to check for plagiarism as well, right? So it can vary quite considerably. And this is the same story with checking for plagiarism in software as well. Normally, a lot of the plagiarism checks we do at the university in terms of student submission is that we check within the class, right? Has a student copied from another student, right? So that is one level of checking. The other level of checking is have they copied from the internet or some other published material somewhere else. That's the second level, right? So for doing any of the checking, right, the similarity report that we get is based on the amount of data that is being checked, right? Does that answer the question? Or comment rather?
Да, спасибо, очень наглядное
Yes, thank you very much for such a vivid explanation. Thank you. And we have a comment from one of our listeners, Sergei Novoselov. Thank you very much for turning to the pedagogical aspect of the problem. I think it is really important to turn to the models of teaching to explain the programs we use. And I also noticed when we do it mechanically, when we just give students a platform to check their works for plagiarism, they focus on purely technical aspects. So basically, they are focused on cheating the system rather than on writing their essay. What do you think about this issue?
I completely agree with you, right? You give, this is not only about cheating, even with the exams, assessment, right? You give them a marking, you give them a problem to solve, and then you give them a marking rubric, right? This covering this point will get you this much marks, and covering this point will get this much mark, etc. Not every student, but a number of students, they work to the mark. So I covered this one, so therefore I should be okay. I'm not getting 5%. I covered this one, I got 10%. So and then I covered the rest of it as well. So I'm done. They don't want to go beyond beyond that mark they get. Similarly, if you're looking for, I mean, has a student is a student students will plagiarize? Well, if the two passes, right, this one has green, then no, I don't want to look any further. So this is, unfortunately, this is an attitude we observe as well here. It's not the right attitude, but however it happens. And there are also students who will never ever use a plagiarism checker. I never use one either for my work because I know I have written it. So why should I even bother checking? It's my work. So the students have got similar attitude. Yeah, it's my work. Why would I want to use a plagiarism checker, right? So that is the right attitude, right? The plagiarism checker should not be used by students, if you ask me. It should be used by whoever is checking things like the examiner, right? So I'm not. All I'm saying is that we have the same approach here. The university provides students with access to the Turnitin, right, which is the tool that we use, and students do use it. So again, we see a similar attitude. I copy from the internet, put it in here, and then see how exactly I can massage it, rephrase it until it passes Turnitin. This is unfortunately the case, right?
Спасибо за ответ.
Thank you very much for your answer. Irina Ignatova is asking, how do you check the tests which have a bigger creativity component, like when there is no set right answer, for example, an essay or a text, something like this?
So these are difficult to mark. I mean, well, typically these sort of essay type questions, marking them takes a lot of time. And somebody had to read it, understand the content, and ensure that certain rubrics are met, and then they have to mark. And it is a long time-consuming process. And to do it well, you need a lot of time. And sometimes, well, we have got several markers, so there is the number of people working on the submissions independently. But now then the problem is ensuring the same quality across different marking jobs, right? If you've got one marker marking everything, there is fairness and consistency across the marking. But if there are several people, then there is potentially inconsistencies. So this is an issue that we face, and especially with your question, which is to do with creative answering, it's a very difficult thing to solve. Whereas some of the mathematical sciences, STEM subject science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, there are possibilities in certain cases to automate the marking, in which case it can be done more fairly across all the students, but then this is a very specialist class of specialist domain, in fact, right? So yeah, creative ones, it takes a lot of effort to mark. And marking is the most difficult problem is A, it's time consuming, and B, it's very boring, right? If you want to mark like 400 exam scripts, it's very extremely time consuming and very, very boring as well. I don't know how you find it, but that's how I find it.
Спасибо большое. Наши участники просят написать название
Thank you very
инструмента,
much.
название этого
Could you
программного
please
обеспечения,
type
но я
the
думаю, что мы
name
просто
of the
попросим
software in the
организаторов
chat? But I think we
потом
will just actually
связаться с
ask the
Мано и
organizers to
разместим эту
mail out
информацию.
the name of the
Большое
website.
спасибо, благодарю вас за интересное
Otherwise, thank you very
выступление.
much. Thank you very much
Уважаемые
for an
коллеги, мы
exciting
сейчас
talk.
сделаем
It
с
was
вами
very
перерыв
informative.
до